5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have ignition. In your face, all over the place. We're online 24/7. 24/7. You're listening to the hottest internet station.
From beautiful Saline in southeastern Michigan.
Around the world at freedomtalkradio.net.
This is the 2009 Top 10 Webcam in the World winner. This is SETV.
Well, good afternoon, or good evening, or good morning, depending on where you are in the world. My name's Bill Zam, and this is our Saturday edition of Surrounded by Idiots. You'll have to excuse my voice, which sounds a little bit rough tonight simply because I have been on the phone for a few hours this afternoon, and I have used up my voice, and we'll see how the show goes. I have been, over the past week or so, I have actually, since January, I have been doing something that I haven't done in years, and that is I have started working out again. Started lifting weights, running, that sort of thing. And given my medical conditions and all the underlying problems that I have, it's pretty darn amazing that I'm able to do what I can do. Unfortunately, the pinched nerve in my neck has started to act up. So it's kind of funny because when this nerve gets inflamed, not only does it cause pain, it also affects my hand-eye coordination. So I find myself reaching for something and I totally miss it with my hand. It's pretty bizarre, but after a while, you get used to it. And as you can see if you're watching the video side of the broadcast, I do not have the camera on myself again. I've got it on the mixing board. But we are running the camera in any case. And we are also running the screen share to the other computer. And there we go. Those are tonight's show notes. So let's get started with the show, shall we? Now that I have bored you to death with all of my personal problems. Snowden. Let's see here. Let me look and see if I can find any. Edward Snowden, the NSA whistleblower. I'm sure you're all familiar with him. He has released some more NSA information. And this particular time, according to the story, a mysterious set of slides showing alien spacecraft have cropped up among the trove of documents that he has released, igniting a frenzy of debate among Internet UFO aficionados, one of which is me. I like to investigate UFOs and learn what I can about them. We had, a couple of years ago, I had a fella on the show who is actually a physicist and has worked at a lot of high-end electronics companies in the defense industry, in the military-industrial complex, and he has actually worked out the physics of how these things probably work. The last I heard, he was looking to beg, borrow, or buy some equipment so that he could actually do some research on UFOs in real time. I don't know how well it's going. But at any rate, this set of UFO slides, it's part of a PowerPoint presentation. And apparently it was created by a British spy agency called the GCHQ. That's the Government Communications Headquarters. And there's 50 images. They're uncaptioned. There are 3 of them that appear to show flying saucers. Now, a fellow by the name of Nigel Watson, he's the author of the Haynes UFO Investigations Manual. Yes, there is such a thing. That he says one of the UFO pictures looks like an out-of-focus picture of a seagull taking a poop. So that gives you the quality. The one that you see on the video side of the show, if you happen to be watching it, is one of the classic-looking flying saucer photos from the 1940s, I believe. I'm fairly familiar with that photo. I think it was taken sometime in the 1940s or the 1950s. A lot of the thoughts on the internet at this point is that there's this document offers guidelines for NSA people and how to spread lies on the internet. It's part of the UFO cover-up, so the story goes. And the PowerPoint presentation is actually called The Art of Deception, Training for a New Generation of Online Covert Operations. So as you're flitting about the internet and looking around and doing whatever the heck it is that you do on the internet, be aware that a lot of these UFO stories, UFO photos, UFO threads in the forums are in fact disinformation that the NSA is doing. And this is one of the instances of very clear information manipulation that the government is doing. Why they're distributing misinformation on UFOs is another story altogether. This just points out the fact that they, in fact, do this. But the question is, why are they doing it? Are they covering up something real? Are they trying to take attention away from, let's say, advanced aircraft that the various militaries are flying? Why they're doing it is anybody's guess. The other stories that I have for tonight for this show, and I'm not sure how long this show is going to go. I'm just going to go over what I have, and when we're done, we're done. And that'll be that. One of the interesting aspects of what's going on this week is, you know, about the ranch out in Nevada that is currently in the news, and I've got some more information about that in a few minutes. But this almost appears to be a case of, hey, watch the right hand, while the left hand is doing something totally different. Because the stock market, if you haven't heard, has begun to collapse, to implode. I have noticed this over the past couple of weeks. The business that I work in for a living is highly dependent on the economy. In other words, it's not like a grocery store. It's not like electronics. It's not like the aircraft industry or working at an airport or working at a gas station. This particular industry is dependent highly upon the status of the economy and how much free-flowing money there is in the economy. For instance, here in the month of April, April is the double whammy month. I don't know if a lot of you probably don't know what the heck I'm talking about, because unless you're a small business owner, you probably don't know about this. And that is this. In April, it's the end of the first quarter. So your quarterly April taxes are due. Also in April, you are required to pay your estimated taxes for April of 2015. So small businesses that pay estimated taxes are getting a double whammy this month. They have to pay their taxes twice. Once for this year to make up any shortfalls from their estimated taxes, and their estimated taxes for next year. So they have a double whammy. And as such, there's literally nothing to do at work. There hasn't been for about the past week and a half to 2 weeks. Just basically sweeping and mopping the floors, waiting for a job to come in through the front door. Things are starting to pick up now because the businesses have paid their monies and everything, and their profits are starting to come in, so work is starting to come into where I work. We also are highly dependent on what goes on in the economy in general. In other words, what I've noticed in the past is whenever gasoline prices get up over $4 a gallon, like we had a couple years ago, where I worked, you can plan on having furlough days because of the hit the economy takes. That's another thing. The gas prices right now here in this area, about $3.70 a gallon. That sucks an awful lot out of the economy. I guarantee you, if you took gas prices and you took them back down to $2 a gallon, you would see a lot more money being spent and the economy would take off. But, of course, that's not going to happen. At any rate, this past week, the stock market has begun to collapse, what I believe to be the next recession that is coming up. This CNBC, pardon me, has a big article about this. Let me see here. They had two drops Thursday and Friday, and if you recall, earlier in the week there was also another staggering sell-off in the Nasdaq. The Nasdaq last week dropped precipitous amount, some unusual amount for the Nasdaq. The main reason behind this is that there's a general uneasiness amongst the market professionals about how fast the market went up last year. The stock market went up. We all know that's due to the quantitative easing and the Fed pumping as much money as they possibly can into the stock market to make it look like the economy is doing better than it really is. In fact, hang on a minute here. Let me bring up something else right here. Chart library, employment. There's let me see here. Let's go over here to this one right here and click on that and see if that gives me a bigger one. Okay. There's a website. It's run by a fellow by the name of John Williams. And it's called shadowstats.com. Shadowstats.com. It's very expensive to join this website. The guy does a lot of research. You get your money's worth when you get a subscription there. But he has a unemployment rate, the official U3 and U6, versus his shadow statistics alternate. And if you're watching on the video side, and I'm probably going to upload this to YouTube after the show, I think, because this is pretty interesting information. If you look at this graph that I'm looking at over at Shadow Stats, it's the unemployment statistics, and it's on his front page. It's shadowstats.com. You can see that there's a red line on there, and the red line is what the government is officially saying the unemployment is by ignoring several key figures, and it's hovering around 6% or so. There's also a gray line on there that is the U6 that takes into account additional information, and that is hovering around 12%. The real unemployment rate, however, when you take into account several aspects of the economy and the number of people working, the number of people that have dropped out, number of people that are on so-called welfare, number of people that are on disability, in other words, the real number of people that are simply don't have a job in the country, it is actually at around 24%. The actual unemployment rate is around 24%. But also, if you look at, let me see here, inflation. If you look at his inflation calculations, you also see that we are running at about, let me see here. If you look at the actual inflation rate, and this has to do with the economy slowing down as well, they changed the way that they gather statistics on inflation in 1980. 1980 and beyond is different than the way it used to be. So I have a tendency to go by the pre-1980 inflation rate because I lived through the stagflation of the Carter years, the Ford years, the Nixon years, which was like 10, 15%. It was horrible. Inflation was horrible. That was our first gas prices increase. It was during the some of the OPEC embargoes and Middle Eastern wars and whatnot. So gas prices skyrocketed and inflation rate was high. So what the government did is they started discounting some of the parts of the economy that they used for inflation. So you get sort of a false picture of inflation. They only take into account certain things, like they don't take into account food prices. Well, food prices are going up like crazy. And the government's saying that inflation is below 2%. Well, that's garbage. That's horse crap. If you look at the pre-1980 based inflation rate, we're going along at just a little bit under 10% inflation. And that has a tremendous effect on the economy as well. So you also have a couple of other things. J.P. Morgan Chase had a worse than expected first quarter earnings. The Gap also fell off quite a bit. Wells Fargo happened to have had a better than expected quarter. So you had J.P. Morgan Chase and you had the Gap falling. And you also have another company called Herbalife. I don't know if you've heard of that. They're based here in Michigan. Their corporate CEO actually ran for the being governor here in Michigan, but lost out to Snyder. Herbalife is they fell 14%. They're a large corporation. They are being investigated by the Department of Justice as being a pyramid scheme, even though technically they're not. They're still being investigated by the Department of Justice because the owner is a big conservative Republican. So they are investigating that. Also, you've probably heard that Radio Shack is closing 1,800 stores, and there are layoffs all over the place of various magnitudes in the economy. So the economy looks like it's going into a recession, which should occur sometime, just about any time now. If the stock market continues to tumble on Monday, I'd say the next recession has officially started, and it's not going to bode well for anything. But the Obama administration is going to do every damn thing they can to keep that from happening because the elections are coming up in November, and it's kind of hard to make fixing the election look less obvious if the economy's in the crapper. So they got to do something to keep the economy limping along at least until November. So we probably have until about Christmas or something like that before the wheels fall off, unless these people are totally without any type of ammunition left in their ammo belt for modifying the economy in any way. At any rate, inflation's going up, and it just appears that like this Flight 370 thing and what's going on with this rancher out west, it all seems like distractions. I don't believe in coincidences, and I don't think this is a coincidence that the economy's taking a crapper just about the time that everybody's interest is being held by all of these other things that are going on. So that is another interesting aspect. Now, there is another one, a senator. I don't know if you guys heard about this. You may have, you may not have. Senator Jeff Sessions, he's a Republican from Alabama. He said, let me see here, April 10th, on the 10th of April, he said that there is a deliberate plan by the president to collapse the U.S. law enforcement system. That's something that you'd be more inclined to read on InfoWars or Godlike Productions, honestly, than having a senator actually getting up and saying something like that. But he says that the president is... let's see here. Let me just read from the article. Senator Jeff Sessions, Republican, Alabama, said today that Americans need to stand up to a deliberate plan by the President of the United States to collapse the nation's law enforcement system regarding What else? Illegal immigration. Now, let me see what else this article says. Our law enforcement system is in a state of collapse, and it's a deliberate plan by the President of the United States, and it's wrong. And people need to be aware of it and stand up to it. And I believe the American people are beginning to do so. No, they're not, Sessions. They're sitting on their fat asses watching TV, eating potato chips, just like usual. Of course, now it's in springtime. They're probably busy driving their kids to soccer practices and whatnot instead of paying attention to what's really going on. And in a few months, we're going to see a whole bunch of cars being repossessed because people can't make payments because they've been getting laid off. And then the automotive industry have to go in the tank, and then we'll have a real recession on our hands. At any rate, Sessions says that all of this is deliberate by the president. So, and sort of ties in with the big hoop-de-doo about Eric Holder earlier this week, where he was screaming and whining about how he's been treated unfairly, and it's unprecedented that anybody from any administration is treated so badly as him, which is just a bunch of whining. Big-ass sissy, why don't you get up and be a man? And never mind. I suspect there's going to be an awful lot of audits going on the Congress, especially Republicans, due to what happened in Congress earlier this week. On to what's going on in Nevada. This is very interesting. I believe that this is not going to turn out well for the rancher involved, and he appears to know it. He doesn't think he's going to come out of this alive. Hold on a second. I had to adjust the microphone just a little bit. For some reason, my microphone keeps seeming to sag down. I'm watching it. It's actually sagging down visibly. I have to tighten up the microphone stand here in the studio. There we go. That's better. I was playing with the microphone stand earlier, and apparently I didn't tighten up all of the fittings on it, so it has a tendency to kind of ease down while I'm talking, and before you know it, the microphone's sitting in my lap. There's a lot of stuff going on with this situation in Nevada. You probably heard that there's a lot of militias are heading out there to help protect the rancher. I've also heard the same sniper that was at Ruby Ridge and Waco, the lead sniper, is also on scene there now, which does not bode well. There's also several other things that are happening in association with this, and if you're watching cable news, you're probably not hearing about any of this at all. In fact, if you hit some of the more mainstream alternative news websites, you're probably not hearing about it at all. So I thought I'd bring this to you guys so you can make your own decisions on this. We have a situation in Nevada where there's a rancher by the name of Bundy whose family has been grazing their cattle on federal land since the 1800s. Now, he has water rights and land use rights to that land that he has been exercising since, the 1800s. His family's been exercising this since the 1800s. There are other ranchers in the area that apparently use similar water and land rights. If you do not use them, they fall into disuse and they are re-seized by the government. So he has been using his rights. You have probably also heard that he is something like $18 million behind in payments to the federal government, which is a little bit of misdirection. That is not the case as far as I have been able to tell from my research. That is just somebody pulling a number out of their butt. Some of the things that are going on in this area are absolutely stunning to me. Nevada Energy, NV Energy, has They have what's called an RFI and a PPA. In order to do a power project, you have to have a PPA. And I'm not sure what that means. But PPA is some type of a backing. You have to have essentially stockholders or backing in order to be able to do this. Now, there's a Chinese company that wants to spend approximately $1 billion building a solar energy project out in Nevada. And you'll never guess where they want to build this solar farm. You'll never guess. You'll never guess where the Chinese want to build this. You are exactly correct. Right where Rancher Bundy's cattle graze. So think about that for a minute. Go ahead and think about that for a minute, and I'll just stand by. I'm going to have a sip of a beverage. Okay. Presumably you have soaked up that news. This is obviously very fishy. There is a project that Harry Reid is involved with that has what is being called a backdoor PPA. In other words, it's a closed investment. And unless you have a PPA, you can't build your energy project. But there's another twist. Harry Reid's former chief of staff just got confirmed as the head of the Bureau of Land Management. This is the people that are going after this rancher out in Nevada. Okay, the BLM is going after the rancher. There is a Chinese solar project that wants to be built right where the rancher's grazing his cattle. And this is all instigated by Harry Reid, the senator from Nevada. His former chief of staff is now the head of the Bureau of Land Management. Just in time to get this little shindig going. The let me see here. The county commissioner. I don't know if you heard about this. There's a county commissioner by the name of Tom Collins. He is the one that said if the militia show up, they better be ready for their own funerals. He guess what? He was on the county commission with Harry Reid's son. So there's an awful lot of backdoor politics going on in this. And you're going to love this. This comes to us from the Las Vegas edition of the Huffington Post. You've heard that the cattle, the reason why they're doing this is because the poor innocent desert tortoise is being trampled and killed by the offending cows. And that's what's precipitated all of this. It's for the wildlife, you see. This is what it's for. It's for the wild. It's for the children. It's for the wildlife. Never mind that solar company that's going to be building a big solar thing here. It has nothing to do with it. It's the tortoise, the desert tortoise. Well, as it turns out, the desert tortoise is scheduled to be wiped out by the Bureau of Land Management. Not only is the rancher going to be sniped, but the desert tortoise is going to be sniped. Las Vegas. This is from the Las Vegas Huffington Post, along with the Associated Press. For decades, the vulnerable desert tortoise has led a sheltered existence. Developers take pains to keep the animal safe. It's been protected from meddlesome hikers by the threat of prison time. That's right. There's stories of people that have actually wanted to go on hikes in this federal land that have been arrested for disturbing the desert tortoise. And wildlife officials have set up the species on a sprawling conservation reserve outside Las Vegas. But the pampered desert dweller now faces a threat from the very people, the Bureau of Land Management, who have nurtured it. Federal funds are running out for the Desert Tortoise Conservation Center, and officials plan to close the site and euthanize the tortoise they've been caring for since the animals were added to the endangered species list in 1990. It's the lesser of two evils, but it's still two evils, said U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Desert Tortoise Recovery Coordinator Roy Avril Murray during a visit to the soon-to-be shuttered reserve on the southern edge of the Las Vegas Valley last week. This is from 2013 or 2012, I believe. So this isn't current news. This is something that's already happening. Biologists went about their work examining tortoises for signs of disease as Avril Murray walked among the reptile pens, but the scrubby 220-acre refuge will soon stop taking animals in coming months. Most of the arrival will simply be put down. Late emerging victims of budget problems that came from the same housing bubble that put neighborhood McMansions at the edge of the once remote site. So the desert tortoise are being euthanized. The cattle are being rounded up. The rancher is due to be executed. And the Chinese are building a large solar power plant in its place. Very interesting things. Now, there's another aspect of this that supposedly comes from somebody that knows the rancher, whose name is Cliven Bundy, Cliven Bundy. And just ignore all of the references that people are making to the fact that Bundy is an Illuminati name. So obviously this is part of the New World Order plot to take over the world. Or at the very least to instigate some type of a civil war in the United States, which is why the DHS bought all those bullets. There is a website run by a fella by the name of Jim Stone. Supposedly, he's a freelance reporter. He has some fairly outrageous conspiracy theories on his website. And he has a couple of pieces on there that have been purportedly written by both somebody in Bundy's family and a friend of his. And if you're not watching on the video site and you've not been to this guy's website, I am going to read portions of this particular so-called email that he got from somebody by the name of B. Hunt. I don't know if it's Bob Hunt, Bonnie Hunt, Billy Hunt, Bonita Hunt. I don't know who B. Hunt is. But guy says, I live in southwest Utah. You'll go up on a ranch less than 100 miles from Bundy's ranch. My father knows Cliven Bundy. I know Cliven's son Ryan. This is not a hoax. It is an action of force by the BLM. And I've probably been saying Nevada instead of Utah, haven't I? At any rate, BLM is going to sell the cattle at one of the smallest cattle markets in Utah. There's an update on that. The governor there has said that unless you have the proper paperwork that goes along with those cattle, you're not going to sell them there. I don't care if you're with the federal government or who you're with. So the theory is now that they're selling them to private buyers. Probably make less money than at the auction, but it sounds like they're going to start selling them to private buyers. Incidentally, one of the other things that's going on is while they're crying and whining that all of this is for the desert tortoise that they're going to euthanize, these cattle are being rounded up and the newborn calves are being left to fend for themselves on the prairie. So you've got the government saying that this is all for the tortoise that are being euthanized. But at the same time, they're leaving all these calves to wander around in the desert dying from lack of milk or anything else from their mothers. So it just keeps getting worse and worse. This letter goes on. Let me see here. I'm going to. I'm reading here. Utah Governor Herbert stepped in and forbid them from bringing the cattle into Utah without the legally required health and brand inspections. which require Cliven Bundy's signature, which they don't have. No feral cattle are allowed to be imported at all, so if they did that, it would be, if they didn't have Bundy's signature on the paperwork, because his brand is on there, is on the cattle itself, then they're considered feral cattle, so they can't even be brought into the state. Bundy claims ownership of 350 to 500 head of branded cattle, and the other 500 to 700 estimated head of cattle would all be considered feral. BLM officially backed off, but we suspect they are secretly shipping them through Utah without any permission to do so to private buyers in Colorado. The let me see here. The BLM hired contract cowboys to do the roundup are from Samson Livestock in Meadow, Utah. He continues, from what I understand, Cliven Bundy owns both the water rights and grazing rights to all of the land where his cattle run. If Bundy failed to use them, the grazing rights would refer back to the Bureau of Land Management and would be retired, while the water rights would revert to the state of Nevada, likely to be sold to the highest bidder. So there's that to go with it, because Las Vegas is hurting for water. So you have, and it is in Nevada. It's not in Utah. It is in Nevada. My bad. I was right the first time around. It appears that the state of Nevada would take over the water rights, which would be sold to the highest bidder, and it would be a bidding war between mineral companies, the BLM, and the city of Las Vegas, which needs a lot of water and has made multiple attempts to buy water through eminent domain from Utah ranchers and farmers, which were all blocked by the Utah legislature. So there's that aspect to it too. And I've also seen information that the Bureau of Land Management has been blowing up Cliven Bundy's water towers, some of which are 100 years old, that are out there, in order to destroy his ability to use his water rights. But it gets better. The chances are that the Bureau of Land Management has already filed a claim on the water rights so that they can sell it to the highest bidder instead of the state, even though the water rights are supposed to revert to the state of Nevada. Looks like the BLM has seized those water rights and are trying to get the cattle off to show that Bundy cannot use the water beneficially, much like what they tried to do with Wayne Hagee. I have done a couple of stories on Wayne Hagee in the past. He was another rancher that the government went after. So what you have here, to recap, is you have Cliven Bundy, whose family has been ranching since the 1800s. They have had the land use rights and water rights for the land since the 1800s. And his cattle use the land. So he is using the land rights and he is using the water rights to water and feed his cattle. What the Bureau of Land Management has done is they have taken the cattle in order to show, and presumably they're going to stand out there and say, look, his cattle aren't here, so he's not using the water rights, so we're going to seize them. Which is logical steps. So that seems like a logical thing for them to do. For now, the letter from this bee hunt continues. For Cliven Bundy, he's not fighting this for his cattle or his own livelihood. He recognizes he will probably die before this fight is over. He has said multiple times that he is fighting this to wake people up about the tyranny of the federal government and also to help wake up the western states about getting the rights to their own land back from the federal government, which has repeatedly shut down ranchers and closed off land. The modus operandi here is, first, get all the ranchers, farmers, Native Americans, and foresters that use the land for positive, sustainable production off the land. Second, grab up all the resources. Third, close off all the lands to public access, including camping, hiking, horseback riding, hunting, fishing, boating, shooting, etc. Fourth, sell off the resources to the highest bidder, regardless of what they will do to the land, the local environment, or the economy. And fifth, collect royalties on the resources in perpetuity. And finally, sixth, reduce and eliminate all SLS and PILT payments to the states, impoverishing them beyond belief. In other words, federal government wants to take the land away from the states and away from the private citizens and sell off the resources to probably the same people that want to build the solar power plant where the cattle used to be before they were rustled by the Bureau of Land Management for presumably Harry Reid's Chinese buddies, which is all very interesting. And I also have, apparently from the same website, the Jim Stone Freelance Reporter website, a piece written by Cherie Bundy Cox, Bundy's daughter. She has apparently written this, and I wanted to touch on this. Let's see. I have had people ask me to explain my dad's stance on this BLM fight. It's Bureau of Land Management. Here it is in simple terms as I can explain it. There is so much more to it, but here it is in a nutshell. My great-grandfather bought the rights to the Bunkerville allotment back in 1887. Then he sold them to my grandfather. Let's see, my great-grandfather bought the rights to the Bunkerville allotment in 1887, then sold them to my grandfather, who then turned them over to my dad in 1972. These men bought and paid for their rights to the range and also built waters, fences, and roads to assure survival of their cattle, all with their own money, not with tax dollars. These rights to the land use are called preemptive rights. Somewhere down the line, to keep cows from overgrazing, the Bureau of Land Management came the Bureau of Land Management. They were supposed to assist ranchers in management of the ranges while the ranchers paid a yearly allotment, which was to be used to pay the BLM wages and help with repairs and improvements of the ranches. My father did pay his grazing fees for years to the BLM until they were no longer using his fees to help him and to improve. Instead, began using this money against the ranchers. They bought all the rest of the ranchers in the area out with their own grazing fees. Then they offered to buy my dad out for a pittance, and he said no thanks, and then fired them because they weren't doing their job. He quit paying the BLM, but tried to give his grazing fees to the county, which they turned down, so my dad just went on running his ranch and making his own improvements with his own equipment, his own money, not taxes. So there it is from his daughter in a nutshell, an explanation of what has been going on over the past several years. Bureau of Land Management is supposed to be helping the ranchers. It's supposed to be helping them with real improvements to the land, helping with fences, livestock management, land management so that the land isn't overgrazed, help with the upkeep of the roads and everything else, and instead they're using it for other purposes and not using it for what they're supposed to, like the federal government usually does, kind of like the Social Security lockbox. And so the guy just threw up his hand and said, screw this, I'm going to give the money to the county. The county said, we don't want the money. So fine, he put all the fees he would have paid right back into the land and did the improvements himself, cutting out the middleman, which would be the BLM, which wasn't doing the job in the first place. So that's where all of this probably comes from, is that the BLM wasn't helping him, so it's like, well, you're going to pay us, and you're going to do your own improvements anyways, which seems pretty typical these days, the way the government works, doesn't it? It's pretty disgusting. At any rate, that's about all I wanted to talk about tonight. There's not much else really going on besides the stock market crashing. A rancher going to be Waco'd out there in Nevada, as well as the super mysterious UFO photos that are probably part of the NSA disinformation campaign. For what reason? Who the heck knows? So that's about it for this show. Don't forget tax day is coming up here this week, as if you could forget about that. And that's about it, I guess. My name is Bill Zam. Remember, Always wear your sunglasses and your hat when you're outside because it screws the facial recognition software in the drones. My name is Bill Zam. Thank you for listening or not listening. Of course, if you're not listening, then why am I thanking you? Because you're not listening. So, until next week, I am going to bid everybody a fond adieu. Don't forget to visit the website, freedomtalkradio.net, and I'm out.